The pounding on my front door wasn't just loud. It was entitled sharp and filled with that distinct rhythm of someone who had never been told no in her life. And the moment I opened it, I was greeted by the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, Karen Holbrook, standing there with a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other, camera already recording as if she were exposing some great injustice rather than invading my Sunday morning peace. Her short blonde hair perfectly curled, sunglasses perched on her nose even though the porch was shaded, and that smug smirk that told me she had planned this confrontation for days. "Mr. Turner," she started, dragging out my name like she was addressing a courtroom, "you are in direct violation of HOA Policy 4B, subsection 9, unapproved fencing height and unauthorized property use." I almost laughed. My home sat at the edge of the subdivision, just outside the HOA boundary. I'd bought it deliberately because I'd had enough of rules about mailbox paint and lawn blade length. "Karen," I said calmly, leaning against the frame, "I'm not in your HOA. You know that." "You've been told that by the county twice." Her smile didn't fade. It only hardened. "You think you're not, but I spoke to the board. And we've decided this street technically falls under our jurisdiction now after the map extension." That was her latest fantasy. She'd been claiming the HOA had extended its control over nearby lots. But this morning, she wasn't just harassing me. She had a new plan. "I'm documenting this for legal purposes," she said, pointing the camera past me into my home. "And if you continue to obstruct the HOA's access to community property, I'll have to call 911. My wife, Emily, walked out of the kitchen just then, holding a cup of coffee, her expression that mixture of disbelief and irritation that only Karen could cause. "Call whoever you want," Emily said evenly, "but you're trespassing. You've been told to stay off this property." Karen's eyes flashed with mock indignation. "You don't scare me," she snapped. "You think your little threats mean anything? The HOA can and will enforce its rules." Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward, phone still up, and tried to wedge her foot into the doorway. "Move," I said, but she didn't. She just kept shouting something about community rights, about how the Turners think they're above the law. So I closed the door, gently but firmly, leaving her outside ranting to her camera. 10 minutes later, we heard the sirens. I looked out the window to see her talking animatedly to 2 patrol officers, waving her clipboard like it was a badge of authority. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Emily was already on her phone, her expression unreadable, and then she smiled faintly. "She really called 911, she said. Let's see how this goes." I didn't know it at the time, but my wife wasn't just a dispatcher. She was the senior 911 communications coordinator for the county, meaning every call in this district went through her system. When Karen dialed that number, Emily's team had flagged it immediately. "You're not going to believe this," Emily murmured as she glanced at her tablet. She claimed there's a hostile homeowner illegally detaining HOA officials on their own property. My jaw dropped. "She's insane." "Yup," Emily said. "But it's about to get interesting." The officers approached, one older with a measured look, the other clearly new and unsure how to handle an HOA dispute. Karen immediately pointed at our house. "There! He locked me out of community property. I demand entry to inspect for violations." The older cop sighed audibly. "Ma'am, you said there was a physical threat." "Yes. He's obstructing official HOA duties. That's criminal interference." The officer turned toward me with a weary expression. "Sir, you want to explain what's going on?" I stepped out onto the porch, hands in plain sight. "Sure thing, officer. She's trespassing again. I own this property. It's not under the HOA. You can verify that with the county records. She's been warned before," Karen interjected. "That's not true. The HOA board—" "Ma'am," the officer cut her off. "The 911 system isn't for HOA enforcement. You can't call emergency services over neighborhood disagreements." Karen puffed up, indignant. "I can, and I did." "He's violating community codes." The younger officer whispered something to his partner, who looked back at her with an expression I recognized, a mix of patience wearing thin and disbelief. "Ma'am, this isn't how this works. You can't misuse 911. I'll have your badge if you don't uphold the law," she shrieked, phone still recording. And then, to my surprise, the older officer's radio buzzed. Unit 4, be advised. Dispatch supervisor requests direct line. He pressed his earpiece. Go ahead. I watched Emily's smirk widen from the window. Copy, the officer said after a moment, and then he looked at Karen with a new expression. Professional, but suddenly colder. Ma'am, dispatch confirms this was a civil complaint. You misrepresented an emergency situation to emergency services. That's a misdemeanor under state law. Karen froze. What are you talking about? I called for help. You called 911 under false pretenses, the officer replied. You said there was an ongoing threat of violence, which was untrue. Her confident expression cracked. No, I didn't say violence. I said, it's recorded, the officer said firmly, and dispatch already reviewed it. She spun toward me, panic rising beneath the makeup. You did this. You and your wife. You set me up. You called 911 on your own, I reminded her. We didn't make you lie. She was breathing fast now, her camera trembling in her hand, and the officers exchanged a glance before the senior one reached for his cuffs. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to put your phone down. You can't arrest me, she screamed, jerking away. I'm the HOA president. You can and we will, he said calmly. Turn around. When the click of the cuffs echoed across the yard, I swear even the wind stopped. Neighbors peeked through blinds, someone down the street started filming, and Karen's world, built on control and intimidation, finally cracked in full public view. As they walked her toward the squad car, she was still shouting, "This isn't over! I'll sue you all!" The younger officer, looking embarrassed, said quietly, "You folks have a good day," and followed his partner. I turned to Emily, who stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her calm smile saying everything. You knew that would happen, I said. She shrugged. She called my line. I take all misuse reports personally. That night, the neighborhood chat groups exploded. Half the messages were disbelief, the other half satisfaction. Karen's arrest video was already circulating with captions like, HOA president learns the law the hard way. But that was only the beginning, because Karen wasn't done yet. From the county jail, she managed to send out a mass email claiming the HOA would be suing Mr. and Mrs. Turner for public defamation, obstruction, and illegal interference with community governance. Emily read it aloud, shaking her head. She's digging her own grave. I wasn't worried until the next morning when a man in a suit showed up at our door claiming to be the HOA's legal representative. That was when I realized Karen's arrest wasn't going to stop her. It had just made her more dangerous. The next morning dawned deceptively calm, sunlight filtering through the oak branches and glinting off the dew-streaked fence that Karen had screamed about just 24 hours earlier. But beneath that calm shimmered the chaos she had unleashed. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when I saw the black Lexus roll up the driveway, sleek, tinted, and completely out of place on my rural stretch of road. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out, briefcase in hand, posture sharp and self-important. I didn't need to guess who had sent him. Mr. Turner, he greeted smoothly, extending a hand he clearly didn't expect me to shake. My name is Gregory Lane. I represent the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I folded my arms. You mean Karen Holbrook's personal empire? His expression didn't change. Mrs. Holbrook is currently unavailable, he said, avoiding the word jailed. However, the HOA wishes to resolve this matter civilly before escalation. You're in violation of several extended community covenants. Extended? I repeated, trying not to laugh. This property is 200 feet outside your jurisdiction. You people don't even maintain the streetlight in front of my mailbox. He ignored that, flipping open a binder thick with papers and stamped with the HOA's seal. The board voted last month to annex properties bordering Willow Creek Drive into the association's oversight, pending approval by the county zoning board. Pending approval, I emphasized. So, not approved. It's a formality, he said with a smug smile. In the meantime, the HOA reserves the right to enforce preliminary compliance. Emily stepped out onto the porch beside me. coffee mug in hand, still in her robe, but radiating a calm authority that always seemed to make bureaucrats nervous. "Mr. Lane," she said politely, "I'm assuming you're aware that your client was arrested yesterday for misuse of emergency services?" His mouth twitched. "An unfortunate misunderstanding. Mrs. Holbrook was simply trying to uphold the rules. She filed a false report," Emily said flatly. "That's a crime, not a misunderstanding. And if this annexation attempt continues, it becomes conspiracy to commit fraud." The lawyer blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. "I assure you everything is above board." "Then you won't mind if we forward this to the county attorney's office for review?" Emily replied, taking a photo of his documents before he could object. His confident demeanor faltered. "That won't be necessary. Too late," she said sweetly. "We like keeping things transparent." He tried to salvage his professional mask, closing the binder with a snap. "You'll be hearing from us," he said, retreating to his car. "Oh, I'm counting on it," Emily called after him. By noon, social media was aflame. The neighborhood Facebook page had exploded with debates about whether Karen had gone too far or whether the Turners were the ones ruining community spirit. One post, clearly written by one of Karen's loyal board members, accused us of weaponizing law enforcement and humiliating a respected HOA leader. Another neighbor, bless them, replied, "She called 911 because someone built a fence. Sit down." But the real turning point came when Emily got a call from her colleague at dispatch. "You're going to love this," she said, putting it on speaker. Karen's 911 call recording just got released under public records. Local news picked it up. I nearly spit out my drink. "You're kidding." "Nope." Channel 9 already aired a segment. HOA president calls 911 over fence. Gets arrested. It's going viral. The video replayed Karen's voice shrieking, "He's blocking community access," followed by Emily's calm dispatcher voice. "Ma'am, are you reporting a life-threatening emergency?" And Karen's haughty, "I am the authority here." The cut to police body cam footage showing her arrest was pure poetic justice. The internet loved it. Comments poured in. The HOA finally met karma. Queen Karen dethroned. This is peak suburban warfare. But not everyone was laughing. That evening, a group of HOA loyalists, 3 of them, all middle-aged men with the same expression of righteous irritation, showed up at our gate holding clipboards and cameras. "We're here to perform a compliance inspection," one announced through the intercom. "Step back from the gate," I said into the mic. "You're trespassing. The HOA has no authority here." Under revised article, "You've been warned," I interrupted. "Any further entry will be reported as criminal trespass." One of them sneered, "You think you can scare us with your dispatcher wife? The HOA board is already filing civil action." Emily leaned over, pressed the button, and said, "Make sure your complaint is filed under your real names. False filings are being flagged by county records." They froze. She smiled and walked back inside. That night, the storm rolled in, literal thunder shaking the windows, lightning splitting the sky, but even the rain couldn't drown out the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. Texts from neighbors who'd seen the news, messages from friends congratulating us, and one ominous voicemail from an unknown number. "You'll regret humiliating her." The next morning, we found a note taped to our mailbox. "Remove the fence or face HOA enforcement. Final warning." It was unsigned, but the font and phrasing matched every HOA notice Karen had ever sent. Emily took one look and laughed. "She's calling shots from jail. Or her board is still running wild," I said. "Either way, they're getting bold." I wasn't about to be bullied, so I drove down to the county records office myself. The clerk, an older man who'd clearly seen every kind of suburban nonsense, shook his head after scanning the HOA annexation papers. "These people again? They've been trying to redraw lines for months. Total nonsense. This address isn't, and never will be, under HOA jurisdiction." He printed me a certified statement and even stamped it with the county seal. "Frame it if you have to," he joked. I did. When I got home, I nailed it right beside the front gate camera for every clipboard-wielding busybody to see. The next day, one of the HOA board members, Janice, Karen's second-in-command, showed up, red-faced and trembling with fury. "You're defying official orders," she shouted through the rain. "You can't mock the HOA." "I'm just following county law," I replied. "Maybe you should try it." She jabbed a finger toward the sign. "This isn't over. Karen will be out soon." "Can't wait," I said. "Maybe she'll bring a lawyer who knows what jurisdiction means." 2 weeks later, Karen did get out, posting bail after pleading not guilty to the false 911 charge. But she emerged from jail not humbled, but angrier, more theatrical, and determined to play the victim. She stood on the sidewalk in front of our house with a local news crew, makeup flawless, voice trembling dramatically. "I was simply trying to keep our neighborhood safe," she told the reporter. "And these people used their power to destroy me." Emily watched from inside, sipping her tea. "Oh, she's going for sympathy points. She's going for delusion," I muttered. "The internet already roasted her." The reporter asked, "Do you regret calling 911? Karen paused, looking into the camera. "No, because I was right. They're the ones abusing the system." And then she pointed toward our house. "I'll prove it." That clip made the rounds, too, but instead of gaining her support, it cemented her downfall. The county attorney's office announced an investigation into the HOA's illegal annexation attempts, citing coercive and fraudulent activities under the guise of community management. The HOA's accounts were frozen. Several board members resigned. Yet Karen, ever the queen of denial, refused to stop. That night, our motion sensors caught her sneaking onto our property with a flashlight, taking photos of the fence. I stepped out quietly, phone camera in hand. "Smile, Karen," I said. She froze, light reflecting in her wide eyes. "This is harassment," she snapped. "No, this is trespassing," I corrected. "Want me to call 911 or would you prefer Emily does it again?" She stormed off, muttering threats. Emily uploaded the footage to the same neighborhood page Karen once ruled, captioned simply, "Some people never learn." It went viral overnight. The HOA collapsed within days. The county revoked its registration, citing corruption and misuse of funds. But Karen's obsession lingered like a bad echo. She filed one last desperate motion in civil court, claiming emotional distress and reputational damage. When the summons arrived, I almost laughed. "She's suing us for making her go viral," I said. "She really doesn't get it." Emily smiled. "Then let's make court day her final performance." We gathered every file, every threatening letter, every video, every fake violation notice, and handed them to our lawyer. When Karen strutted into court, she looked ready for her redemption arc. Instead, the judge tore through her claims line by line, finally declaring, "Mrs. Holbrook, not only does this property not fall under your HOA, but your repeated harassment constitutes abuse of authority. Karen's..." Face turned ghost white as the judge ordered her to pay our legal fees and issued a restraining order preventing her from contacting us or any county office again. It was the perfect justice. As we walked out of court, cameras flashing, reporters calling her name, Emily turned to me with that serene smile I'd fallen in love with. "You know," she said, "she thought she could control everyone, but she forgot who answers the calls when things go wrong." I laughed softly. "And she called the wrong dispatcher." We drove home in quiet victory, the fence gleaming in the afternoon sun, unapproved by the HOA but approved by freedom. By the time summer rolled around, I thought the nightmare was finally over. The HOA was officially dissolved. Karen was legally barred from coming within 200 feet of our property, and for the first time in months, the neighborhood seemed peaceful. Birds instead of sirens, laughter instead of angry knocks. But peace, I learned, doesn't sit well with people like Karen Holbrook. It gnaws at them. She couldn't stand losing control, and that's when she shifted from public confrontation to quiet revenge. It started small, strange cars idling near our house at night, someone leaving anonymous code violation notes on our fence even though there was no HOA left to issue them, and one morning, a smear of paint across our mailbox that read, "Traitors." I installed more cameras, reinforced the gate, and tried to let it roll off my back. But Emily knew better. "She's not done," she said one night, scrolling through her phone. "I've seen this before. When people like her lose power, they get desperate." Sure enough, the next week, a county inspector showed up unannounced. "We received complaints about unlicensed renovations," he said, holding a clipboard. I stared at him dumbfounded. "From who?" He hesitated. "Anonymous source. Said you built a security wall without permits." I pointed toward the wooden fence that had been there for years. He sighed. "Yeah, that's what I figured. Sorry for the inconvenience. We've been getting a lot of bogus reports lately. Same address, same handwriting." Emily appeared behind me with her badge from the dispatch office dangling subtly around her neck. "We'll handle it," she told him. The man nodded quickly and left. That night, we sat on the porch under a blanket of crickets and humidity, and she said quietly, "She's not just trying to annoy us. She's trying to wear us down." I knew she was right. And I also knew I wasn't going to let Karen win. We decided to set a trap, not illegal, just smart. Emily used her connections at the sheriff's department to flag any new complaints submitted under our address. Within a week, 3 came in: noise violations, property misuse, and illegal landscaping. Each was filed under fake names but from the same IP address. When the report came back, Emily's eyes sparkled with the satisfaction of a detective closing a long hunt. "Guess whose address that IP belongs to?" she said. "Karen Holbrook's sister." I almost choked on my coffee. "You're kidding." "Nope. She's using her relatives to file false complaints. But here's the thing. Those go into public record. That means the county attorney can add them to the harassment case." We didn't call Karen or confront her. We didn't have to. A week later, she was served again, this time by the county itself for filing fraudulent government reports. The look on her face, caught by one of our cameras, was pure disbelief. She screamed at the process server, "You can't do this to me! I'm protecting my neighborhood!" But the law didn't care. She was fined heavily and ordered to undergo community service. Still, even that didn't stop her. She took to social media, creating fake profiles to post about us, calling us bullies, liars, and crooked government insiders. Emily's department had to step in again, tracing the accounts and documenting them for defamation. One night, as we sat watching TV, she got a call from a colleague. "You're going to laugh," the voice said. "Karen just tried to file a Freedom of Information request for her own 911 call recording. She wants to sue dispatch for emotional trauma." Emily just sighed. "Let her. It's public record anyway." When the recording resurfaced, the internet once again turned her humiliation into meme material. Someone even remixed her line, "I am the authority here," into a song that hit 50,000 views in a day. The fallout was brutal. Sponsors pulled out of her husband's small real estate business, her board allies stopped answering calls, and within a month, the Holbrooks house went up for sale. We thought that was the end. But Karen had one final act left, and it was her boldest yet. Late one Friday night, as Emily and I returned from dinner, we saw flashing lights in front of our house. Police cars, their blue glow spilling across the lawn, and an ambulance idling by the curb. My stomach dropped. I parked fast and ran up the drive, shouting, "What's going on?" An officer stopped me. "We got a report of a domestic disturbance with injuries at this address." Emily's jaw tightened. "Who called it?" The officer checked his tablet. "Anonymous, but the number traces to a prepaid phone registered under—" He stopped mid-sentence as Emily flashed her credentials. "This is my house," she said calmly. "We're fine. Check your call log. You'll see the voice matches a certain repeat offender." The officer nodded slowly, realizing what was happening. "We'll look into it." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, their supervisor confirmed it was Karen. She had bought a burner phone and called in a fake emergency, trying once again to get us arrested or embarrassed. Only this time she had violated her restraining order. They picked her up an hour later, just a mile from our house, sitting in her car with her phone still open to the 911 call log. When the deputies brought her in, she reportedly said, "I just wanted them to feel what I felt." That statement alone sealed her fate. A few days later, Emily and I sat in the courtroom once more, side by side, as Karen stood before the same judge who'd warned her months ago. Her lawyer looked exhausted. "Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress." Your client, the judge interrupted, has demonstrated a pattern of harassment, misuse of emergency services, and defiance of court orders. He turned to Karen. You've left this court no choice. You are hereby sentenced to 6 months in county jail, with probation following and mandatory counseling for abuse of authority. Karen's jaw trembled, her defiance finally crumbling. They ruined me, she whispered. The judge didn't even respond. The gavel fell, echoing through the room like thunder. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Do you have anything to say, Mrs. Holbrook? Someone shouted. She covered her face and sobbed. They took everything from me. Emily and I didn't speak until we got back to the car. Then she exhaled softly and said, She took everything from herself. After that, the silence felt different. Peaceful, yes, but also like the end of a storm. The kind where the air is cleaner, the light sharper. The fence stood tall, unapproved, and proud, just like the day we built it. Neighbors who once sided with the HOA now waved when they passed, some even stopping to apologize. We didn't realize how bad she was, one older man said. We just wanted to keep things nice. Emily smiled. There's nothing wrong with nice, she said. But there's something very wrong with control. Word spread that the county was revising its HOA oversight policies because of what happened, limiting their power to harass homeowners and enforcing strict penalties for misuse of authority. Our story even made a segment on national morning news. Local HOA tyrant gets taste of her own rules. We didn't ask for fame, but it found us anyway. Emily got promoted to Regional Communications Director. Her cool-headed dispatch work praised for exposing the misuse of emergency systems. I went back to focusing on my job, fixing up the property, and finally starting the garden we'd been planning since before the chaos began. One night, months later, I was sitting on the porch again, the sound of frogs echoing from the creek when a car pulled up quietly on the street. My pulse spiked for a second. Old habits die hard. But it was just a moving truck. I watched as a new family stepped out, a young couple, 2 kids, boxes stacked high. The husband waved when he saw me. Hey there, he called. We're moving into number 47. Welcome to the neighborhood, I said. No HOA anymore, if that's what you're wondering. He laughed. Good to hear. We had one in our last place, never again. Emily came out beside me, smiling. You'll like it here, she told them. And as the stars blinked on overhead, I realized the chapter had truly closed. Karen was gone, the HOA was history, and all that was left was freedom. And the quiet satisfaction of knowing justice doesn't always come with noise. But when it does, sometimes your wife's the one who answers the call. Life after Karen Holbrook's downfall felt almost surreal, like waking from a nightmare you'd gotten used to fighting in every night. The quiet had weight to it. The kind of stillness that follows a long, hard storm. The neighborhood, once divided by fear and petty control, slowly began to heal. The empty HOA office stood abandoned, its sign stripped, weeds crawling up the walls where once she'd posted mandatory notices. The laughter of kids returned to the cul-de-sacs, the sound of lawnmowers and barbecues filling weekends instead of angry debates about mailbox paint or fence colors. Emily and I finally got to live like normal people again. No meetings, no threats, no phone calls about violations. But one morning, as I stood at the mailbox flipping through a stack of letters, I found one with no return address. My first thought was her. I opened it slowly, bracing for some venom, but instead found a single page in neat, trembling handwriting. Mr. and Mrs. Turner, I owe you both an apology. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to say I understand now how wrong I was. Karen Holbrook. I read it twice. It was short, almost hollow, but something about it was different. There was no arrogance, no defense, just regret. Emily came up beside me, read over my shoulder, and said softly, Maybe she finally learned something. Maybe, I said. Or maybe she just wants to feel human again. We never replied, and that was enough. A few weeks later, the Holbrooks' old house sold to a retired couple who loved gardening and didn't even know what an HOA was. The first weekend they moved in, we helped them set up their patio furniture, and it struck me how strange it felt to stand on that lawn again, once the stage of Karen's self-made kingdom. "You must be the Turners everyone talks about," the new neighbor said cheerfully. "Heard you took on the HOA and won," I smiled. "Something like that," Emily added. "We just wanted to be left alone." The woman laughed. "Well, you've earned it. No rules here except be kind and mow your grass sometimes." For the first time in a long while, it actually felt like home again. Months passed, and life drifted back to ordinary rhythm. Emily's promotion kept her busy, and I expanded my home workshop, fixing old tools and restoring furniture. Peaceful, quiet work, the kind that doesn't require fighting anyone. Sometimes when the evening air got still, I'd think about how easily one person's obsession with control could turn a whole community upside down. Power, when mixed with insecurity, becomes poison. And Karen had drunk deeply. I learned that she completed her sentence quietly, did her community service at a local shelter, and then moved away, out of state, reportedly to live with her sister. When I heard that, I didn't feel anger or triumph anymore. Just relief. She was gone, and the storm had finally moved on. Still, her legacy lingered, not in fear, but in lessons. The county council passed what they called the Holbrook Amendment, a new law limiting HOA authority, requiring transparency in all decisions and penalizing misuse of emergency services for non-emergencies. Emily was invited to speak at the press conference. She stood at the podium, calm and confident, explaining how one phone call can misuse a system meant for saving lives and how accountability matters at every level. Watching her there, the cameras flashing, the applause rising, it hit me that she hadn't just handled the chaos. She'd turned it into change. Later that night, we sat on our porch with a bottle of wine and watched the sunset spill across the hills. "You know," I said, "you're kind of famous now." She laughed softly. "Only among dispatchers. They call me the woman who arrested her own 911 caller." "Has a nice ring to it," I teased. She leaned on my shoulder. "I just hope people remember the point, not the drama. We kept that letter from Karen in a drawer, tucked away but never thrown out. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about standing your ground when someone decides your peace belongs to them. And we'd done exactly that. The neighborhood moved forward, now run by a small volunteer group, not an HOA, just neighbors helping neighbors, planning potlucks instead of policy votes. It was what community was supposed to be. One summer evening, as the fireflies blinked across the yard, our new neighbors gathered for a barbecue. Someone asked Emily, "How did you two stay so calm through all that?" She smiled. "We didn't. We just chose where to put the fight." Everyone laughed, but I knew what she meant. You can't always stop people like Karen from existing, but you can keep them from owning your peace. As the night wound down, kids running barefoot under the string lights, I looked around and realized we'd done more than survive. We'd reclaimed our lives. The fence still stood, solid and unbothered, the same one she'd tried to destroy. It was more than wood now. It was a symbol of boundaries, of freedom, of the idea that sometimes standing your ground quietly is the loudest message of all. When the crickets sang and the last ember of the fire pit faded, Emily turned to me with that half smile that said everything. "Think she'll ever call 911 again?" I chuckled. "If she does, I hope you're still the one who takes the call." She laughed, leaning into me. "Some lessons take time. Some take handcuffs." The stars shimmered overhead, the world finally at peace. And in that calm, I realized the truth that all the shouting and chaos had tried to bury. Real power doesn't come from titles or control. It comes from knowing when to let go and when to stand tall. We chose the latter. And in the end, it wasn't just Karen who learned something. It was everyone who ever believed that fear could rule a neighborhood. The Turners never wanted revenge. We just wanted to live freely. And now, under the quiet hum of the night and the soft whisper of the wind against our unapproved fence, we finally were.